Hello and welcome. We've got finals today. It's the 2018 College Championship Finals presented by State Farm. You're joining us after a weekend of outplays and upsets where one more best-of-5 is the difference between being crowned champions and going home empty-handed. I'm your professor for the day. My name is David Freak Turley. This is my TA. Here is your syllabus. This is Mark Zimmerman. We are here at the NLS desk. It's going to be amazing.
Why are you handing your TA the syllabus? Shouldn't the TA have the syllabus to hand out to the audience?
No, I prefer to do sort of the Tommy Wiseau version of creating things. I tell you how to do it the day of, and we're going to do an amazing time ad-libbing. Now, as we pull up the bracket, we see that Columbia College has yet to drop a game as they swept both UT Dallas and the University of Illinois. But on the other side of the bracket, University of California, Irvine made swift work of University of Ottawa, but featured a Game 3 loss, however, still a 4-game win against Maryland just yesterday. Interesting to see these teams, a combined, 12-1 record so far in this bracket?
Yeah, and that one loss the one loss that they did suffer for UCI was a very strange one where they're going up against a Brand, Draven, Yasuo top, all this crazy stuff, and it kind of felt like they got sucked into that insane style of play. So whenever they were not kind of going full solo queue mode, they did look a lot more impressive.
Absolutely the case here. So for the first time ever, 2 varsity teams actually facing off in the college championship.
This is really cool to kind of see the investment that they're putting into their programs paying off here. And this is the first time we've had 2 scholarship school finals, and it's very impressive to see. And it's something that I think hopefully we see more of in the future because it gets buy-in from the players, the campus cares, all this stuff is all good stuff.
Yeah, really awesome to see, and we've kind of heard about a lot of what's happened if you've seen the interviews from the players throughout the time overall with this one. We also have seen these teams know each other. These were 2 of the favorites coming in. We'd talked to Julian about his expectations for the finals. He expects them to be much more difficult. We know that during this series, you can see his Cassiopeia was incredible, and he expects to not get it at all in this final.
Yeah, we talked about doing your homework. Didn't feel like they did it and allowed him to get that. Julian himself admitted he abused Cassiopeia all the way to rank 1 on the NA solo queue ladder, so very confident on that champion. Tons of outplays over the course of the game. And he did say, you know, like you were saying, does not expect to get it this time around after showing he can play on land too.
Nor do I expect him to get it anymore. But while Julian did have his pop-off moments, the stacked Columbia roster have shown they're not a one-man show. They do have threats across the map.
Yeah, and I think Stumpy is the guy that has really impressed a lot of people over the course of this event. He's played a lot of carry champions, some of them a little bit more unique, like the Fiora and things like that, but has had great performances on them and has had some games on tanks as well, so he's shown that he's pretty versatile. And this has kind of allowed Columbia College to look like they work very well together as a team, that they have people who have different styles that they can play, and that has allowed them to look like one of the best teams here, and no surprise to see them in the finals.
Yeah, this is, again, one of the expectations that they're going to make top 4, probably into the top 2, which they have right here, and we'll see if they can make it all the way from that one. Of course, we'll see if they can keep that level of play up versus UC Irvine, who have shown they have arguably even more threats across the map, multiple avenues of winning throughout the weekend.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. On day 1, they very heavily prioritized their bot lane, playing through the former pros of Bloodwater and Latman, and Deskerton also had great performances on his Vlad before they flipped it to the top side of the map in day 2. Captain Nuke gets a lot of the carry threats, and they're playing up against Yang, who was the guy filling into the top lane, so not his native role really. And you can see that they really tried to pick on him over the course of this series, and they were able to get a lot of solo kills against him, and that enabled Captain Nuke to take over a lot of these games. So a totally different look, all that assisted by Youngbin.
Exactly, Youngbin in his, 3rd competitive role now.
Yeah.
Bot laner, mid laner, now a jungler here, and looking, honestly, very much on form. Another player who had some LCS stage experience, the UCI. One that teams were pretty sure was making it to the final, dropping only a single game, and even that one being a bit of a fluke. I think were fairly expected results for this squad. Now, when you get your pocket pick, it takes more than just killer mechanics to take over the game. Sometimes it requires in-game knowledge, sometimes luck, and sometimes a support who is willing to do anything to make a good play great, just to say, I'm helping. Brought to you by State Farm. In yesterday's series against University of Illinois, Dean's Alistair not only saved Julian's Cassiopeia, but set up Stumpy's Yasuo for an epic turnaround.
Percent HP at this point. One Fang goes in. He's going to get a Crimson Rush heal back in. Julian low gets himself healed up with the Seraph's Embrace and the Quicksilver Sash. But does he stay alive? They're turning the damage back around. That's the double kill. A possible triple coming in. But Stumpy's going to pick up 2 more.
Watch Vlad.
I got knock up.
Nice. Nice. Pillar, Vlad. Look at Vlad. Nice.
Ooh, let's go, boys.
Mid. I think I bought that QSS.
Glad you waited for my Q.
Yeah, dude, I was like, I don't want to really go in on that pillar.
I just went in on the fattest, group of people.
Good communication there.
I love the post setup. I'm so glad you got the 3-man pulverized, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny to hear people analyzing their own plays, like, wow, that was really good, dude. You hit a monster pulverize and won that fight for us. So not only are we commending him for it, his teammates were pretty surprised by it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, oh, surprised by how good you were. But
Well,
you know,
not like surprised by how good you were, but like, that play was nasty.
I'm misquoting.
Everyone sometimes is even surprised at how good they pulled.
That's true. I constantly surprise myself, and you constantly surprise me. You're better every day. Now, before we send it off to the casters, let's take a look at the win conditions for this game. We're going to start with University of California, Irvine. What do you think for them?
Yeah, I think for them, they just really need to focus on playing the macro game. Over the course of the tournament, they've shown that they have a very good understanding of what they need to do with their team comps, with whatever champions they pick to actually go out and win the game, not just through brute forcing plays, but actually using that map well. And so they need to avoid A-ramming in particular. That's kind of that one game that they lost, is they just started over-fighting and diving constantly because they're like, hey, we're ahead. They have a bunch of troll picks, yada, yada, yada. We're going to win. But if they play a more controlled game, I think this will be their series to take.
All right, meanwhile, on the Columbia College side, what do you think is going to be their ticket to win?
Yeah, whenever the enemy team has a advantage in the macro game, you need to find another way. And I think snowballing a lane should work pretty well for them. We already talked kind of about Julian and Stumpy both being able to play carry threats. And so they should send Bucksack to one of those two lanes, figure out which one that they can get an advantage in, and then try and ride that through the rest of the game. Julian in particular, as the former rank 1 North American solo player, you kind of have to look for him to be the guy to step up in the series.
Definitely want to have my eyes on is that mid lane for Columbia College. Now, recognizing the strengths from each of these teams, how do you think this one's going to go? What's your actual prediction for this match?
Yeah, so I might have gotten a little hint in the win conditions, but I think it will be UCI 3-1. Expect it to be a lot closer than their 3-1 yesterday, where it was kind of 3 stomps in this one really weird game. I think these will be pretty close, but over the course of the games, as they drag on a little bit slower pace, you will see UCI's macro advantage in getting them those wins.
Yeah, I have UCI favored myself as well. The scoreline, I think I'll probably go 3-1 as well. It feels like... It's like, yeah, I mean, I said it first. You just kind of like me. It's okay, though. It's whatever. Yeah, I feel like any given game is like 70-30 UCI. And if you give 3 or 4 chances at it, one of those is probably going to flip over. So I think there's one game snuck out, but I do think UCI is a better team today.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Thoughts? Yeah.
No, I think it'll be really interesting in particular to watch that top lane matchup because Captain Nuke showed he could play a lot of those carry champions, but if he opts into it versus Stumpy and he starts losing those, he'll be kind of forced off that role. And maybe that's another way that they can look to win for Columbia. Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll see what happens here. Now we're going to send it over to the casters, Captain Flowers and Azael, to meet the teams.
Thank you, Freak, and thank you for joining us as we enter the 2018 College Championship Finals. I'm Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and here to make sure my co-caster leaves his bias for Zyrene's alma mater out of this series, it's Isaac Azael Cummings-Bentley.
All the Canadian teams are already knocked out. I'm bias-free.
Bias-free because we've only got the USA teams left. We'll see which one of them can go home with that victory here today. It should be fun to see what the culmination of the last 3 days brings us here at this precipice.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. And this has been a tournament with so many upsets. And yes, UCI may be the favorites coming in, but very excited to see what Columbia can pull off.
All right, let's go ahead and welcome the players competing for the title today. First up, the varsity program representing the Northern Conference, who swept their side of the bracket to arrive here now. It's Columbia College. In the top lane, Stumpy. In the jungle, Bucksack. Mid lane, they've got Julian. Bottom lane is Evan RL. With support Dean. And let's not forget coach and substitute Drake Porter and Hollywood.
And facing off against them, the Western Conference champions and the hometown heroes, University of California, Irvine. In the top lane, Captain Nuke. Jungler, Youngbin. Mid lane, Deskerton. Bot lane carry, Latman. His support, Bloodwater. Their coach and substitute, Coachman and Frost.
One more time, these are your 2018 College Championship finalists. Columbia
Columbia College in 3-0 fashion will get their shot at college champion.
3-0 for Columbia College. They say we should have ended first in the Northern Conference. They righted the wrongs. They took down the team that took down Maryville. And now they're moving on to the finals. UCI will punch that ticket to the finals.
They look dominant. They look very, very good. A well-composed team, dominant solo laners, dominant bot lane, and these guys are really a complete squad.
On an individual level, we can overtake them.
We're going to be able to silence the UCI fans in the crowd.
We have no fear going into that.
Winning the whole thing would mean so much to me. This is my 3rd year here. I want to hold that trophy.
Winning the entire championship would just be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
It would mean everything to me.
And it'll be something that I can just tell my kids, grandkids, and relatives about for the rest of my life. So it'd be just a lot.
You could tell just from the way the players talked about it, they're all hungry to place their hands upon that trophy and victory here today. And like freaking Mark said on the desk, just leading into the introduction for this match, between these two teams, there has only been a single match dropped over the course of their journey through the bracket thus far. So these two should be ready and raring to butt heads.
Yeah, definitely the case. There's been a lot of one-sided affairs throughout the tournament so far, and I think this one should be pretty close. You know, a lot of the top seeds have been knocked out. UCI, the highest remaining seed, but, you know, we saw Maryville getting knocked out in the first round, was a heavy favorite, and it hasn't always gone the way of the seeding.
Anything can happen, and even yesterday we heard in one of the post-game interviews they were talking about sometimes the game just turns to solo queue, and you've got to be willing to play some solo queue.
Bring it down to your level.
I don't know if that's what we're going to see today, but we are into picks and bans for the first time, so let's see what they decide to go with. Columbia College taking out Kaisa and Irelia, while UC Irvine says, you know what? Julian can't play Cassiopeia this time.
Yep, he was right about that. Not going to get to see his Cassio, at least in game number 1. We'll see if he can kind of flex his muscles on some other picks, because sometimes if you can show success on those other picks, you can open yourself up to have them forcing those bans to be changed. But a triple ban towards Julian, and it's clear to see who UC Irvine actually thinks is the big threat.
Yeah, all 3 of those mid laners banned out there by UC Irvine. Columbia College going for a little bit of flex capability, banning out both the Irelia and the Vladimir that we've seen go to different solo lanes in the past. Columbia College decides the first pick is going to be Trundle.
Yeah, Trundle had been pretty big for UCI yesterday. They were first rounding it quite a lot. They were also highly prioritizing Xayah and Rakan, often going with the first pick Rakan, grabbing their jungler as the second and locking in that Xayah as the 3rd pick in the first round. So not going to be that just yet, at least. It will be the Ezreal, which we're safe to assume it's going to be played by Latman. I'm probably going to be going for something like that TP Ezreal. But Caitlyn Morgana is available, which is such a strong answer into Rakan in general. And that's what I'm expecting to see, yeah.
And there you go, instantly locked in. They knew Azale was going to predict it. All they could do was make him right at that point. So Caitlyn, Morgana, Trundle, all locked in on the side of Columbia College. UC Irvine looking at the jungler themselves now, going to match roles during this first half of the draft if they lock this one in.
Yeah, the Ezreal was maybe the only a bit atypical pick, but when you're looking at the picks and bans, if you're saying, okay, we're going for matchup priority, well, Caitlyn Morgana is good in the bot lane that was drafted. Graves is a very strong matchup into Trundle, into that kind of jungle 1v1. You will have early pressure. You can actually kite out and kill this Trundle, especially because the dash. You can actually dash over the Trundle pillar, kind of making it sometimes actually be more of an impediment to the Trundle himself. It's definitely going to give some priority to Young Bin, who has been kind of really wreaking a lot of havoc across the Rift so far in the tournament.
And you already mentioned to Zale how so many of the bans in the first phase were directed towards the mid lane, and even more. 5 out of 6 of those first phase bans were solo lane champions. With only solo laners left to pick, it's going to get worse and worse from here. So I'm really curious as to what we're finally going to see these picks settle on once the teams get to remove more from the pool. Columbia College takes out Ornn, while UC Irvine gets rid of the Yasuo and the Corki.
Yeah, 4 of the 5 bans from UCI directed towards Julian. Yes, Yasuo could be mid, but we've seen Stumpy playing it, so I'm kind of assuming that's more directed towards the top lane there. This will pinch the pool quite a lot here from Julian, and it does also, allow Descarton, because he's on red side, to have the possible last counter pick. But the mid lane pool has been thinned out quite a lot. I mean, 2 bans from Columbia, you have the 4 bans from UCI. That's 6 mid laners already off the table, and these guys are going to have to kind of start reaching deeper and deeper into their pools and show us something different.
And it becomes 7 now with Zoe being the final ban of that second ban phase as well. Swain does get locked in by UC Irvine, so they'll go ahead, say, all right, we still have to give you counterpick towards one of our lanes. We'll throw the Swain out there. We can deal with whatever you want to pick into that. And it looks like Columbia College thinking about the Karma.
Yeah, Karma mid fairly safe, also is very good at actually enabling your AD carry. This seems very heavily like a composition built around bot lane here for Columbia. And you know, the guys on the desk were talking a lot about how successful the solo laners have been for Columbia, but Evan RL has been showing up this tournament here too, and this is a comp built for him to succeed. If Evan RL does not have a very strong game, Columbia will not be winning this first match, as he's most of the damage here.
Right, you've got a Morgana, you've got a Karma, you've got these champions that excel at supporting and shielding and enabling that big long-range carry, and it's up to Evan to fill that role here on his team. UC Irvine locks in the Gnar as the final pick to go up against Stunted Cho'Gath.
And this is interesting because we saw Captain Nuke actually last picking that Gnar into Yang yesterday, dominating that lane, but we know Yang, you know, is a bit less comfortable in the top lane than some of these other players, as he's kind of filled up there for his team, not his main role. And while you normally want to look at Cho'Gath and Trundle and say, hey, well, that's a one-tank team when you're looking at the Gnar. Cho'Gath Trundle is actually, I would say, the best combo for jungle top for actually shredding a one-tank team. And with the Trundle ultimate, the true damage from the Cho'Gath. But Captain Nuke yesterday built full damage Gnar and just straight up split push the whole game against the Cho'Gath. We could see that again here. You know, went obviously the Frozen Mallet, the Black Cleaver, but then straight into a Blade of Rune King, straight into that GA, and he may not want to team fight.
Maybe that's a new big brain strategy, Azael. Maybe Trundle can't steal your tank stat.
If you don't
got any tank stats to steal. He's getting inside his head a little bit here as we load onto the Rift for the first time here in this best of 5 today to find out which one of these two squads will go home the 2018 Collegiate Champions. The rosters, like we already said, so much being put on Evan RL's shoulders in this first game. A lot of faith Columbia College has that their AD carry player is going to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely the case. He's going to have to perform well. It is double TP marksman in the bottom lane, 3 TPs apiece for each team. So definitely a lot of cross-map movement will be possible in this game, and the Door and Shield plus coin start here for UCI on the bottom lane. This is the same strategy that they actually were running yesterday when they wanted to focus more heavily on top. You play a somewhat passive marksman early on. Ezreal can farm very long range with his Qs, you know, TP back to lane very early on for his tier. You have Rakan playing coin instead of the spell piece for that more passive playstyle, and this allowed Youngmin to actually focus on the solo lanes, focus on trying to snowball top, and with this Gnar into Cho'Gath matchup, that could be them going back to that strategy they employed yesterday once again.
And let's not forget the win conditions that we heard from the desk as well, because one thing I want to make sure that I'm watching as we go through with this is, can those conditions be lived up to? Can we avoid the ARAM situations? Can we get the lane snowballed in a way that facilitates victories for either one of these sides?
Or will they blow up our expectations? Will Columbia show that they can macro just as well as UCI, you know, going up against these teams? Because you know, there always is that question of, you know, was UCI's macro just that much better than everyone else as it has appeared?
Right.
Or was it just that they were too much better than their opponents? Can Columbia actually match that? Because, you know, watching this tournament, I would say UCI, you know, for lack of a better term, looked like the most pro-ready type team, and it's not surprising to say that because they have 3 former pros, but the way that they were able to play to their win conditions, the way that they were able to move around the map and actually manipulate the minion waves, vision control, neutral objective, preparation, all these things were kind of boxes that were being checked very well by them.
It was, I think the word that I would use to describe it most from the games that I was watching was readiness. They were always able to make sure they were ready for whatever situation was coming after them, even in situations where you would see other teams potentially at this level might get panicked, might get a little bit in a rush, maybe skip a couple of steps trying to get to some sort of an outcome. This team seems patient. They seem like they know what has to be done, and they can do that with a level-headed way of thinking that doesn't put them in a bad spot.
Exactly. You know, one of the kind of easy eye checks I always feel like to say, all right, well, does a team have good macros? Can a team still win if they are not getting kills, right? And UCI at times are losing kills but gaining gold across the map, actually getting more advantageous positions because they always have pressure. You know, if they're pushing and they're in a dangerous spot bot, well, it's because Captain Nuke is already at the turret top and they're going to be getting some damage there. And that's one of the things that they really have excelled at. And they could be looking, again, more for that split push style with Captain Nuke back on the Gnar. But that being said, if Stumpy can neutralize there, if Columbia College can play these early games even and force UCI into a 5v5 style game, it is going to be so hard to take down Evan RL with a mid lane Karma and a Morgana protecting him in this massive front line.
Mid lane, Karma, the Morgana protecting him. Like we already talked about with the Trundle a little bit, even if you want to try to get tanky against this guy, you won't be able to. And the Cho'Gath burst potential just means that Evan's set up in those situations in a way that, with how we've seen him play before, with how he's been able to do what he needs to do when the team sets him up, this should be another game like that if Columbia College gets their way. But like you said, the macro talent, what UCI can bring to the table in terms of rotation, in terms of playing their game correctly. I mean, if your opponents win 5v5, don't play 5v5.
Exactly. You know, that's kind of what UCI's opponents were excelling at yesterday. You know, we saw 2 days ago already was able to kind of run this, with Maryland, run this kind of crazy protect Kog'Maw, all-in 5v5 style composition. They used that to actually take down UWO, I do believe, and that was a style that was very effective. But when that was kind of tried against UCI, UCI just never really gave them the team fights. They refused to kind of group and give them those 5v5s, and that's where it can get difficult.
And one thing I like looking at, just an interesting fact about this series is, remember, this is the grand final for the entire collegiate playoffs here in 2018, and both of these schools are varsity programs. They are not just the club teams that have made it here in the past. And I think that's a really cool evolution of where college esports has found itself as it's grown over the years, is we're now at the point where these schools that support these players and support these teams and help provide more infrastructure are now seeing the results and the fruits of those labors come together. And we've got the level of play just consistently climbing to the point where we are praising teams like UCI for having that sort of pro readiness that you were talking about.
Exactly, and I mean, it's kind of a microcosm of what we saw in the LCS. We've seen that these pro houses, that having all the different resources to support them, from coach to analysts to sports psychologists and all these various things, have upped the level of these teams at the pro level, and the same thing is going to apply at these college programs as it gets more and more serious. But nice little trade there from Bloodwater, and it's no surprise that two of the teams that are the best supported not only attract the best players, but perform some of the best.
Bucksack not having a fun time in his jungle right now. Youngbin deciding to get up in his face. You mentioned when we were watching the draft play through, it was the Trundle picked first, the Graves picked afterwards as a response. So Youngbin knows that he can get in the face of this Trundle. He knows it's a favorable matchup for him, and they have to call down help for Bucksack, or they just have to surrender these resources.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating to have this happen to you because they're able to do this around the top side because Captain Nuke has this winning lane, right? Captain Nuke is pushing in his opponent. When Stumpy is under the turret, if he tries to roam the match, then you lose all that farm, and UCI can simply back off. So they're playing it very intelligently. He's able to steal away those wolves, kind of create some pressure on the map, and we'll see if he can continue to kind of expand upon that advantage.
I mean, that's what you get for having Gnar on your team. When you've got one of the most notorious lane bullies in that top side of the map, you've got to take advantage of those situations. You can see Desperton getting a little bit of vision down there in the enemy jungle, wants to keep an eye on Bucksack, but that will be cleared out almost instantaneously here as Youngbin again wants to move up. He will not be able to steal away the large chicken. Bucksack hits level 5 off of that one, but he wants to do as much damage as he can to the rest of the jungler's economy. And he'll pop the control ward while he's at it. Desperton right here next to him means there's no way for Bucksack to protect that.
Definitely nothing that he can really do there, as Julian was back in base as well. And it is one of those things, though, where while UCI is putting on pressure, no real big advantages have been kind of opened up. Yes, Youngbin is in the face of Bucksack. Bucksack is not giving up kills. He's giving up the minimum. He's fighting for his farm as much as he can. And while Stumpy's getting pushed in, he's actually dead even in farm there in the top side. And that's something that UCI's opponents were not able to actually accomplish yesterday, was kind of giving up that minimum. It was always more and more that was being dropped. So if they can stabilize a game like that, that is really an avenue to success. And even Julian going back for an early chalice, he's going to be working towards that Athene's first item, which speaks volumes about their game plan. That is core grouping for the bonus heal on your shields, and really an item that says, hey, I want a team fight.
Right, this isn't your Luden's Echo Rush Karma that's just going to hit that mid-game power spike and try to blow people up so you can push down objectives really quickly. These guys are fine being patient and waiting, but at the same time, you're up against a team that's got some scaling power of its own. You've got Ezreal in an era where you can build double tier items, and Ezreal can scale into a big monster, and honestly, Bloodwater on the Rakan, the Swain from Descraton, you've got a lot of big team fight tools here. If you do get into a 5v5, it could still make them pull their own.
You definitely do, and it's always one of those things where it's interesting, because I do think that compositions, teamfight compositions with tanks are more easy to execute, but if done perfectly, often it's the tank teams that lose out, because while there is an easier to execute composition here for Columbia, as Descraton may actually go in with phase rush, but he's gonna have to back off. And you know, if UCI can actually kite back and forth in a fight, essentially, you can get to a stage where Latman and Youngbin and Descraton, all these guys are just kiting back and forth and actually focusing down the front line. And sometimes the backline members from the opponents can't really get up and get involved before your front line is dead. And that's kind of the dance that you play. If this tank team gets a really good engage and gets you fully committed to fight, you will get burst down. But if they get kited out, well, the full DPS team can win.
The tank team has a lower floor of execution, but the non-tank team has a higher ceiling.
Exactly.
If they can go just completely crazy, that's what they would be looking for. But right now, they're looking to just keep farming this up. This bottom lane, the only spot where we're really seeing any CS discrepancy at all, and it's half a wave. Both solo lanes are 1 CS apart from each other up until I just said that, and they had to make it 1 or 2 more. But bottom side, we are seeing a slight advantage there for Evan RL. TPs have been used by both AD carries, and now we'll see if Julian can set something up here onto Descraton with the help of Bucksack. Already dropping down the Trundle ultimate here as Descraton will look to turn things right back around. No fear here thanks to the Swain ultimate. They'll just keep healing up, burst down those minions. Everybody walks away. No summoner spells burned.
Yeah, nice calm play there from Descraton. Doesn't need to blow his flash, just going to trade out the ultimate, the shorter cooldown there instead. And Youngbin and Descraton are trying to continuously come back in, try to take away some of the Raptors here, and edge out a little bit of an advantage there for themselves. Youngbin really is kind of the biggest CS advantage. On the top side of the map, you can see this little Caitlyn Morgana combo, but Evan RL is actually tanking damage that whole time. And they're the ones that kind of came out the worst for wear, because great, you got this nice little chunk onto Bloodwater, but Latman was up in Evan RL's face that whole time, and if an AD carry is hitting an AD carry, well, your AD carry is hitting their support, you generally do lose those fights, so it's something they're going to have to be careful about.
AD carry low means that Evan RL and Dean will have to be mindful of what's going on around them down here. You can see the junglers both hovering this bottom side now as well. Blast Cone over the wall there from Youngbin. Looks like he'll show up in the river just in time to see the Scuttle Crab has already been taken away by Bucksack. Dean with level 6, seeing if maybe there's an opportunity to fire off a snare over this wall as Bucksack waits for his opportunity.
Yeah, Julian is roaming down. They want to make something happen, but it may be tough to do so. Actually, Bloodwater's trying to push this in, so this could actually get themselves a kill.
Bloodwater tries to get away, does manage to break the ultimate from the Morgana. That's flash plus ult from Dean, going to be traded away for the flash of Bloodwater.
Yeah, not too bad of a trade, because at least they do actually stop from crashing. It looks like Evan, though, doesn't want to hold the wave. He wants to push regardless, so he did get off his base timing, does get back with his Zerkers. NBF swords are looking pretty good there, and up on the top side, Stumpy building towards the Frozen Heart, I think, is very intelligent itemization. Yes, that does make you very vulnerable to Descraton, but he's kind of assuming that he's going to have to be in silence a lot of time anyway. And not only does getting that early CDR really benefit in actually getting your fee stacks out as fast as possible and getting those 6 from minions very early on, you have the Graves, the Ezreal, and the Gnar, who are also going to be pretty affected by the Frozen Heart debuff. And then by the time, hopefully, you run into Descraton, you've had time to actually pick up enough HP, enough magic resist to really deal with him as well.
Speaking of Descraton, he'll move towards the enemy jungle now with the help of Bloodwater, just stepping inside to throw down some vision, remove that of his opponents. We saw Julian shoving him in earlier on in this lane, but the nature of Swain is once you hit that level 7, level 9 point where the Q cooldown gets low enough, then you start being able to handle the wave a little bit better compared to what that Karma can do right from the outside of the game. Speaking of that Karma, I also want to point out she does have the Athenes and Holy Grail fully completed to match that completed Rod of Ages there on the Swain.
Yeah, definitely the case. And Swain does, as you said, get a lot stronger, is able to actually start to hold off on those waves and start pushing in a lot more. once you have level 9, once you have the shorter cooldowns, you can kind of maintain the wave control. And that's one of the things that they've been trying to use to actually help Youngbin steal away some of those camps. Like, as you can see again, he's back to the Raptors, and this is really a point of attack. In competitive play, oftentimes jungle advantage just results in Raptors because it's very close to mid lane. It's relatively safe to actually go in and try for. If you're trying to invade for wolves or Gromp or things like this, it's easier to get collapsed on and killed. So you can kind of harass your opponent here and try to get what you can.
And when you look at the gold this game, it's 0 turrets to 0 turrets. It's 0 kills to 0 kills. But because of the Kleptomancy on the Ezreal and because of the advantages built in the jungle, it's 1,000 gold ahead for UCI 12 minutes into this game. So those passive leads are building. They are creating more opportunities for this squad who now sees that chance to go for the Ocean Drake with Young Binsbury.
Yeah, they definitely do. But Captain Nuke maybe getting collapsed up here on the top side.
Tries to flash out, wants to get away from it, jumps further out again. Low mana on Stumpy means the follow-up isn't there, and Nuke will live to see another day.
Yeah, Bucksack was actually so close to landing that chomp on him, and that slow may have been enough to actually get a kill. Had Stumpy had Feast as well, and maybe a Flash Feast would have been a kill, but still, trading Flash as the jungler for a solo laner is generally a positive play for that jungler. But it's a 4-man play coming down here on the bottom side for UCI.
RL puts a lot of damage onto Bloodwater. He doesn't even need anybody else to help him out on that one. Does manage to grab the first blood.
Oh, the binding!
Desperate going to be bound up. Can't get in there in time. It's still going to be 2 for 1. They won't stop it, but they'll at least get one on the way out.
Yeah, that was about as good as you can hope for, though, for Columbia. Still a nice play on the bottom side for UCI. They do get 2 kills, but it's first blood going over to the Caitlyn in what should have been a 2 for 0 from UCI.
It was a very well-played response from EvanRL and Dean being able to take down Bloodwater like that, but there were just too many resources from UCI being committed for either of them to walk.
And this is one of the things that they do so well, and they've consistently done so well throughout the entire event, right? You know, tracking the cooldowns from their opponents, knowing that Julian had no TP, knowing that they can make this play because Bucksack showed topside, and now they're trying to punish him for taking the Rift Herald.
Bucksack very low on mana here, but does manage to get away. Stumpy makes the rotation over to provide the CC and get his ally out.
And Bucksack will get out, but this means Youngbin says, all right, well, I'll just farm your topside, right? So continuously getting those advantages. Bucksack shows top, they dive bot. Bucksack takes the Rift Herald, well, I'll take your Wolves. I'll take your full topside even. You can probably take the blue here at the very least as well, but may want to play it safe. We'll see what the decision is, and here it is one more time. Just honestly a really nice binding here from Dean, and you know, Bloodwater could have perhaps actually dodged that with his E, you know, if he dashed over to Lapman, but once you get caught, you get shredded down, and then the eventual dive coming in. It is a really good binding here from Dean, but EvanRL is so low and so much damage coming out of these 280 carries. Swain tanky enough to actually withstand those turret shots and survive.
Honestly, the Caitlyn Morgana CC chain is just absolutely devastating to get caught in. One binding, one trap, one anything, and you're going to be hit with the rest of the combo guaranteed. Descraton, again, looking to move around and make these plays. Now finds himself caught in a spot where he may be in some trouble here. Does eat the root and the follow-up damage from the inner flame, but Bucksack will not go any further forward, not with Julian as low health as he is.
Yeah, Julian pretty low, and it was a very tight timing on if he had his ultimate back or not, so just now getting it. Had Columbia known the exact time, or maybe they try to hard commit and kill him off before the ult comes back up, but it would have been tough to do either way, and now that ultimate is back, so really not much chance of getting a kill, but Bucksack would love to get a kill before he drops Rift, because if you do, it's essentially guaranteeing one turret there. Without the defense.
And they do need to try to get themselves caught up in some way. They're down 2,500 gold on the side of Columbia College 16 minutes into this game, and while that's not going to end the game on its own, it does show a situation in which, as we move towards the mid-game, UCI is in a prime spot to play that macro game we already gave them so much credit for.
Yeah, they really are, and they just know how to play around these advantages so incredibly well, and we'll see what the option is going to be. But again, Youngbin down to the bottom side, just pressuring this up. Bucksack coming in to defend, but you know, this just gets them pressure. This gets them turret damage. Youngbin walks in, the bot lane has to retreat, get a few pot shots off on that turret. It's now down to a third HP, and at the same time, Julian was roaming, and now Descraton's just going to go on him.
Descraton decides it's time to make this 1v1 happen. Julian trying to get away from this one. Another nice root comes out, and the damage from Youngbin will provide the assist for Descraton's kill.
Yeah, Youngbin flashes in there. Julian wanted to hold on to the flash, thought he could get out, but gets caught by the never move. Graves comes in, they pick up another kill, and that is likely going to be mid lane turret, and the pieces are starting to fall apart here for Columbia. The cracks are opening up, and UCI is just finding their advantages.
Now, when I said 2,500 gold isn't something that's going to start winning the game on its own, I meant it.
Yeah.
That 2,500 gold is now 5,000 gold, and things are looking much, much rougher for Columbia College. They will even up a little bit of that there, bring it back down to 4K with the success of Shelly in the bottom lane, grabbing that turret, but it's just a little bit too little to grab the first turret bonus gold as well, which is just more money not in their pocket.
And it's also scary because both the bottom turret and the top turret are also low, and here's the play one more time. Julian probably had to flash here. If he flashes that never move, likely gets out. Was trying to hold on to it, but now UCI, Youngbin returns to the bottom side. Desperton gonna zone them off, and that's another turret. The top lane turret is incredibly low from Captain Nuke, and just kind of the pressure that he has had in that 1v1 there too. And when the last outer gets cracked, that gold lead starts to get so big, it becomes so difficult to actually challenge for these neutral objectives. And thankfully for UCI, it's an Infernal coming up in 40, and that's just about as good of a timing as you can have when Latman has a Triforce, has his Muramana already completed, CTR boots. Like, this Ezreal is ready to go. Caitlyn still needs, another good 5 minutes.
I mean, and that's the nature of the champions to begin with, right? Ezreal, back before the days of double tier, was always this champion that spiked earlier than the crit champions, but at the same time, if you let it get to 6 items, okay, he'd fall off in damage potential compared to them. The Caitlyn, we always talk about 3-item spikes being necessary, and Julian now might find himself in a pretty bad spot up against Youngbin. Captain Nuke coming in from the side. Boomerang will not be able to keep Julian locked down thanks to the flash, but that was way too close for Gunk.
Yeah, he does get out, but that's a flash down, and he has to base around the Infernal timing. There's no vision for Columbia out around that Infernal. UCI is getting full wave control, and if you're sending your AD carry top, it almost feels like you're just conceding that Infernal over to UCI. They may not feel that they can fight for it at all. And Latman and Bloodwater will just go down, start this up. Youngbin's on the side as well, so it's going to be an Infernal for UCI.
UCI grabbing this uncontested is just another check mark being placed into one of the boxes in the game plan here. More damage on this team that'll scale up so well. I mean, we talk about Infernals being important on teams that have plenty of damage, where the AP and the AD matters to everyone. Gnar, Graves, Swain, Ezreal.
Yeah.
That's pretty juicy when you look at the guys it's going over.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have double marksman alone, it's going to feel so good because these guys are going to be stacking so much AD. And Captain Nuke, assuming he goes similar to yesterday, is going to complete his Frozen Mallet and then just build into a Blade of Rune King, keep slip pushing against Stumpy, and that just makes it harder and harder. Stumpy has quietly done a pretty good job actually holding on in that 1v1. He never gave up his turret. He's only 14 CS behind. That's pretty good for that 1v1, but when everywhere else is crumbling, tanks don't really get to have much effect on the game.
Latman not going to allow that setup to work just yet, but they could still be in a bad spot here. Latman and Bloodwater pushing onto this turret, but they know on the side of Columbia College that Latman and Bloodwater can just run down now because the minion wave's already at the turret. They don't try to collapse.
And it's so scary because you don't know where Graves is. And Graves is very, very strong at this point. Youngbin is already level 12. That is 2 levels up on Bucksack because of this constant pressure, because of how well Graves farms innately, and gone for a super aggressive build. He went for rapid fire second. This is not, the more kind of like hybrid style, more defensive style. Sometimes people will get a PD, more commonly Black Cleaver. This is a higher DPS build, and I sometimes will see people just even go rapid fire. He went Zerkers, and then they can go straight into things like an IE if they want to go all out secondary damage. The Longsword says he's probably going back to a Black Cleaver or maybe a BT or something like that, but we'll see where he goes.
I just had such a ridiculous amount of control this game. Every time we've looked at what the junglers are doing, it's always Youngbin getting up in the face of Bucksack, taking over the map, using the advantages of his shoving lanes to move up, while Bucksack has to say, all right, I have to play around this Graves because I can't play into it.
And that's what UCI is so good at, right? Like, you see, when you are an analyst, you see, okay, this is the draft, this is what I expect from the teams, this is where their advantages lay, and to see a collegiate team always recognize exactly how to play out these matches, always recognize exactly where they can get those edges is very impressive because they have consistently played around their opponent's advantages, played around their advantages, and always been able to kind of sneak out more, it feels like, than the competition can really get from them.
Speaking of more, the gold lead overall now up to 7,000 gold for UCI, 22 minutes into this game. And I want to echo back to what you said earlier, Azael, talking about one of the tests that you can use to determine how good a team is. Can they win without getting a bunch of kills? Now, granted, UCI, they've got 3 kills compared to their opponent's 1. They are winning in kills. But to only be up 2 kills and to have a 7,000 gold lead means you are playing every aspect of League of Legends better.
Exactly. I mean, 2 kills is generally a very small advantage. 7,000 gold plus an Infernal plus an Ocean could be a game-ending advantage. And that's what they really are so good at doing, just kind of sneaking out these little edges, because there's so many high-level players in Collegiate these days. I was talking to Tizzo, one of the guys who organizes and really works heavily on college LoL, and he was mentioning how the first college LoL championships we had, there was platinum players in the top 8. This year, the lowest players are like the top of Diamond. These teams have a lot of teams with 5 challenger players.
Desperton in some trouble here, gonna pop the ultimate, keeping himself alive. Ignite's still ticking. Bloodwater had to use the ulti there defensively as well. Desperton nearly getting picked off, but nearly's not gonna matter too much. Dean taken low there. A little bit of damage coming out from the Swain at the back end of it, but nobody falls.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, UCI, if they get drawn into kind of that ARAM style, the 5v5, fight nonstop style, these teams are ultra talented. They can fight you. They can 1v1 you. They can, take it to a team like UCI in a case like that. But I don't think there is, a team, or at least teams have not shown just yet, that they can play the same macro style, right? So it has to be more about aggressive play. It has to be more about kind of playmaking and lane-focused advantages for these teams when they're going up against UCI.
Well, at least for the side of Columbia College, you're at the point now, they've taken down all the tier 1s. Pushing into the tier 2s can become a much bigger beast, especially up against something like a Caitlyn, especially up against Karma and Morgana that can be so difficult to dive and force a play onto. So now, I don't just want to see macro from UCI, I want to see the execution on the micro level as well to break into this next stage.
And one of the things we also saw yesterday, from Maryland up against UCI was the fact that even from behind, they were able to draw UCI into team fights around the Baron. They were able to actually have some very close fights, even from that big gold disadvantage. And as you said, this is a comp that can team fight very well, right? This is a comp that can, perhaps hold on and scale. And if you can somehow maintain your tier 2s, if you can keep control of some of your jungles, so you're kind of farming evenly, over time, the gold lead can mean less. And if you can ever get UCI into that fight, have Evan RL get to that super, super strong point, hey, maybe you can make something happen.
We are currently looking at Latman's build, by the way. Muramana, fully completed, fully stacked, second tier, a little bit over 250 right now. So about on point for that 30-minute major Ezreal power spike where he has both the Seraph's Embrace and the Muramana along with the Sheen Evolution. So once those next 5 minutes pass, that Ezreal damage is going to become pretty extreme. At the same time, Evan RL, the man who we talked so much about during Champion Select, the guy who so much faith is put in the way this comp is designed, does nearly have that 3-item Caitlyn power spike that changes the game from, oh, it's Caitlyn to, oh, it's Caitlyn.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big difference when you can complete that. The question is going to be, we know Evan RL is going to be able to put us some damage, but will the front line be able to actually hold up when everyone on UCI has these big gold advantages? Can the Cho'Gath actually survive long enough for Evan RL to kind of get his work done? And that is really going to be the test in a lot of these team fights.
Desperton popping the ulti. Wants to go in after Julian here. Will not go any further after forcing the flash. They'll take the summoner spell as a win and back themselves back up, if only momentarily. Just look at all the vision these guys are placing down as they make these aggressive plays.
Yeah, just playing so calmly, so collected. Desperton, Youngbin gonna get some damage down here. They're pretty far up though, could get pillared in.
Youngbin trying to escape away from that pillar, has to use the ulti to do so. Desperton, remember, no Swain ult available. Already used it, trying to go for the play just moments ago. Flashes over the wall, and Buckstack goes after to take him down. That is kill number 2 for Columbia College.
A nice pick for them. Latman, though, pushing on the other side. This is what UCI excels at. You lose a kill, you try to get pressure elsewhere. But this is an opportunity now that I would have liked to see Columbia College try to push it, try to actually move towards the Baron, try to threaten these sorts of plays, draw UCI in and try to get some kills, try to make something happen in a team fight, because if you sit back, it's just gonna be tough.
Youngbin is level 14 compared to Buckstack 11 that you can see on your screen here as well, working towards that Black Cleaver for item number 3. Not quite the Infinity Edge that we were theory crafting about a little bit earlier, but still pretty dangerous item. Bloodwater going in, True Shot Barrage over the wall. 3 versus 3 isn't going to go anywhere. Columbia College gets themselves away.
Yeah, they will get themselves away. And exactly. I mean, the Trundle is so far down. He has 1 item, right? Like, Graves is going to finish 3 items relatively soon. And it becomes so hard to see how do you survive when you're down 3 to 4 levels against these solo laners and junglers as a tank. But here's the play one more time. This is what Columbia College needs to do. They need to have playmaking. They need to be aggressive and not let UCI play their game. And Desperton pushes very far up, does not have his ultimate, is going to be taken down.
3 to 4 levels on that jungle difference, as well as about 3,500 gold.
I mean, Desperton is 5 levels up above Bucksack, right? Like, how are you actually supposed to tank 2 level 16 solo laners, a level 15 Graves when you're a level 11 Trundle with 1 item, right?
Very careful.
Very carefully, yes.
Cinderhulk, the only HP item he really has in that inventory besides another Ruby Crystal that's just now shown up. Aegis of the Legion also built there for a little bit of extra resistances. Luckily for Columbia College, Stumpy's still been doing a pretty good job in the farm department. Has more farm actually than his own mid laner, which is solid. Still lagging about 30 behind his opposing top laner. But he's got the Adaptive Helm, he's got the Frozen Heart, working on a larger health pool now to make it so he can be that front line that you were talking about earlier, saying this is what they need for Evan RL to have the firing time that can win them those team fights.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the longer the games go, the less the gold lead does mean, as long as it's not expanding. But UCI has been kind of continuously expanding that. You know, they're closing in on 10K in the lead, and Stumpy definitely is going to be a very strong tank in the fights. You know, he has his level 3 ultimate, but UCI is just going to 2-man the Baron, and Columbia College has no vision of this whatsoever. I don't think there's any way they're even going to check it. There's just no way for them to really know this is going on. They don't have enough vision.
All right, Bloodwater shows up. I was starting to wonder a little bit because I saw both the health bars dip to around half when Baron was half, but Bloodwater shows up and that becomes easy peasy. 1, 2, 3, UCI gets themselves Baron, no contest, 10,000 gold lead. Everybody's got the buff. And this is where pushing into those tier 2s all of a sudden isn't that big of a worry anymore.
Yeah, definitely not. They're owning pretty much the entire map at this point. Really good vision control around that Baron, able to fully lock that down, sneak it out. Just a smart play, you know, showing a Captain Nuke on the bottom side, showing your 80 carry Lapman, you know, in the mid lane, and even showing Bloodwater for quite some time. Made it so that Columbia College didn't really expect this was happening until it was much, much too late. So UCI now, monumental advantage. They're going to go 1-3-1. They're going to try to just continue to grind this game out. Not really looking to 5v5, even with this edge they have. They just know no one can answer their split pushers on both sides, and no one can answer all these Baron minions. So Columbia College will have to commit too many resources to one place, and you get the turrets elsewhere.
I mean, you've got this nice line of Caitlyn traps that only exists in one lane until Evan RL grabs the kill onto Youngbin. Nice punish from Columbia College there, as Youngbin's just a little too aggressive in the enemy jungle, but at the same time, it's Columbia College who loses yet another turret, this time in the top lane, the first T2 to fall.
Yeah, Youngbin getting a bit too aggressive there, no flash available, and does go down, but as you say, it's a trade, and it's, you know, you'll almost always take a tower for a kill. So the pressure continues down on the bottom side. Captain Nuke still shoving up, and Captain Nuke hasn't been back to base for so long. He's actually sitting on 3,500 gold. So he's gonna have a big buy.
Bucksack gets sent back to base. He can chop as much as he wants for the next 40 seconds. He's got nothing else to do. And UCI made sure of that. 4-3 now in the kill count, 5-1 in the turrets, and 12,000 gold up. There's one tier 2 left to take, but they're gonna have to get away from some of these Morgana bindings and work their way through the jungle if they want to get down there. For now though, Captain Nuke is fine just doing what he's done the entire game.
Exactly, even though he has so much gold, it actually kind of makes sense that he didn't base, because they wanted to have, you know, pressure with this Baron buff immediately. And yes, he could have another item and have an advantage in the 1v1, but really all he needs to do is stand down there and Baron buff the minions so that they can push elsewhere. And that's exactly what they're doing. Desperton now half HP off of that top inhibitor turret. Mid lane still getting pushed up. Eventually they will reset, and then they're going to have a tremendous amount of gold to spend. But until then, the pressure is still on, and it's up to Columbia College to get a pick and try to shut this down.
Binding doesn't find its way onto Desperton. Swain ultimate going to be used here. Evan RL does a lot of damage with this Caitlyn. Trap comes through, more damage goes down. Evan RL takes out Desperton.
Yeah, good pick there. They do get a kill. and no objective taken elsewhere from UCI, so that's going to slow down the push a little bit. And the kill going into the pockets there of Evan RL is also pretty big. He is their win condition. This Caitlyn needs to do almost all the heavy lifting for Columbia because they're just being run across the map. UCI clearly has no plan to ever team fight them. They say, okay, great, you drafted 5v5. Well, we're gonna PvE. We're gonna fight the turrets. Have fun.
We'll give you a 2v2 every now and again, maybe, if we're feeling like it. But for the most part, that's not what this is. 2 more auto attacks into that turret to take it down. That one drops to Captain Nuke. Everything except the base itself now taken from Columbia College by UCI, and even the base has had that first big hit served already. Top lane inhibitor turret down means there's something they can force in open ground if UCI wants.
I don't know if I've ever seen someone in competitive back with 5K, and that's what Captain Nuke just did. So just buys a full Blade of the Rune King, the cowl on top of that as well. That's what feels bad, man, when he comes back out on the map. You're like, it's okay, guys, I'm still ahead in items. Well, he had 5K.
Yeah, it turns out the Cho'Gath is sitting there in a decent spot. Like, I was watching him as he was clearing out the waves against the Gnar. It's like, oh yeah, I'm pretty tanky. I'll take a little bit of damage, but I'll heal back up. No real worries. We got Warmogs, but Bork and not Bork against a big health sponge is a pretty different world. So hopefully for the likes of Columbia College, they can continue holding on in that split push scenario. Baron having worn off now means that at least they have a little bit less worry than before, but it's not like they have any more control over the map.
Yeah, the thing is, it's for Stumpy, he has held on really 1v1 the entire game. I don't think he's really given up any solo turrets. He lost one when Youngman came down and these sorts of things, but it's not really been a very fun game for Stumpy. Playing the Cho'Gath, the game has not been about their lane at all. It's just been a Gnar pushing you in. There's nothing you can do about that in the 1v1. The team is losing elsewhere. UCI is taking advantages elsewhere across the map, and Cho'Gath has very little playmaking in this 1v1 matchup, so you're kind of just relegated to sitting under your turret, trying to farm it out, trying to hold that, and do that as well as you want. If you lose elsewhere, it doesn't matter.
UCI on the retreat now as Columbia College, 5-man strong, tried to make something happen, but at the same time, this is UCI refusing to play ARAM. 3 middle, clearing waves, staying safe, Captain Nuke and Deskerton on the side lanes. It's textbook. It's exactly what they need to do to win, and they haven't diverted yet.
When you have a gold lead, your opponents must always send at least +1 members to a certain lane. So all that happens is you send +1 to mid lane, you send 4 to 5 to the mid lane, that lane retreats, the other lanes push forward. And really, it's all about the coordination of having pressure at the same time in all 3 lanes. If your split pusher is way far up and you don't have any pressure elsewhere, well, he dies and you don't get anything. If everyone, well, also the meme. But if you collapse and you kill that split pusher, and the team is all there already near the turrets, well, maybe they get an inhibitor, and then all of a sudden it's not even worth it, right? Like, chasing down becomes very difficult. So this is kind of that battle that UCI is playing, and the difficulty that Columbia College is having when they don't even have very good engage, right? Like, great, you have an incredible 5v5, but this team never wants to 5v5 you. How do you force it? They don't have a Malphite to dive in. They don't have a Rakan for a hard engage.
You got a big slow
Morgana binding. You can pillar, you can try to flash binding, you can, maybe Cho'Gath and try to knock them up, but oh my god, that's some damage.
That is a lot of hurt coming out.
You don't want to 5v5
single shot and an ace in the hole takes Latman down to about 1/3 of his health. He'll heal back up a little bit. He does have the Bilgewater Cutlass. The Blade of the Ruin King will be the final item there from him. Yeah, the Drakes too. Infernal Cloud, Ocean. Elder Drake will be next one on the table, and that is just yet another win condition that UCI can use.
Yeah. For Columbia College, really, if you give up the next Baron, the game is over. So it basically becomes, all right, prepare as heavily as you can for these next neutral objectives and hope you can get a fight. But for UCI, it's kind of somewhat more easy to navigate it since there's double neutrals, right? So if Columbia College goes to Baron, well, you could just take the Elder and just continue splitting and these sorts of things. So we'll see what the answer is going to be, but they really do need to find some way to force a fight in these next couple of minutes. Otherwise, UCI, who has full map control, is just going to take the neutrals and close this game easy.
Stumpy continues holding the bottom side pretty well. The Warmog's doing a lot of work on that one. Bloodwater and Latman moving up in the enemy jungle, seeing maybe if there's something that could be found. But the answer is going to be no. Columbia College staying safe enough for the time being, as Stumpy just same old song and dance. Time and time again, that little Gnar will not leave him alone. But it's UCI, again, looking towards the Baron. They do manage to make him angry a little bit there, get him aggroed up. Good Julian be in any sort of danger? Doesn't look like they want to go over the wall. This is a full-on 4v4. Stumpy was hanging around back in the base on the spot platform in case he needed to TP. Julian fires off the inner flare. Been bound up. Julian retreating back over the wall. Columbia College trying to find the chance to fight, but just not getting that extended DPS time that MNRL needs.
Yep, and with the Blade of the Rune King, plus the adaptive, Captain Nuke not only does enough damage, but is tanky enough that he can kind of just ignore Stumpy, and he's just running up and hitting the turret a couple times every single wave. Stumpy is basically in this battle where he doesn't get to fight the Gnar. He has to clear out the minions before the Gnar gets to the turret, and that's the only way you can really stop him from kind of chipping this down consistently. So you see he's just going to run around him, hit the turret a couple times, and then Stumpy's going to go back to base, heal up, and back for it.
So here comes the fight. Bloodwater already popping the ult, having to get himself back. MNRL gets a shot down onto Labman. Dean tries to go for the flash into the binding, but the binding will not ring true. Redemption brought down to keep the health bars topped off. With Columbia College having not found what they were looking for, can UCI get anything back? Desperton gets popped! And MNRL goes on a killing spree. TP used by Stumpy. Captain Nuke still down in the bottom lane, though.
You have to go to Baron. Captain Nuke did not TP. You must start Baron right now and secure. It's the only hope for Columbia.
Stumpy trying to keep these guys locked down, see if they can find anything else. Columbia College needs to make this happen. They've got the enemy top laner in their base, destroying those inhibs. It's Baron or bust for Columbia College. 3 members of UCI
the feast.
Looking to stop this. There should be no way to steal this one away with that feast up. Nice shot from Youngbin to take down Julian. Bucksack likely going to be dropped next here as well. Dean taken very low. Latman does fall. Bloodwater tries to run away from this one. MNRL still looking to chase him down. Youngbin survives with about 1/3 HP, but let's not forget Captain Nuke in the base the entire time, destroying everything. MNRL goes on a rampage, but at the cost of so many structures.
Yeah, and they lose a couple kills there. Columbia College can't actually get the Baron, they can't get the Elder, and Captain Nuke takes down the inhibitor turret, takes down the inhibitor, takes down a Nexus turret, so it's a costly fight for them, even though they won it. They need to get out on the map and take one of these neutral objectives, though. That's really going to be what it's about, because the Baron still spells doom, and they're going to have to run back to it now. They're going to try to 3-man or at least start this up and see what they can make happen. Julian is up in 10 and has his teleport, so he can join, and Stumpy still has his feast.
There comes double TP. They're able to take Captain Nuke into a spot he doesn't want to be. They bind him up, burst him down a little bit. MNRL continuing to DPS down here. Desperton on the front line, going to be doing a lot of damage in return. Zonia's Hourglass giving him golden off the side. It's Julian versus Youngbin. Julian staying alive, but with MNRL down, there's surely no way for Columbia College to fight this one out now. Latman with the true shot barrage brings it in from away, while Desperton will find the triple kill on the Stumpy.
Yeah, UCI collapsing from all sides. They're going to get Bucksack, and they are going to get game 1 of the collegiate finals.
It took them a while to crack the defense of Columbia College, but they played a smart game, they played a controlled game, and now they're pushing it all the way to the Nexus itself. The second Nexus turret falls, and this team makes a statement in game number 1 with a 20,000 gold victory.
I mean, just insane macro play there from UCI. They did not team fight Columbia, but they didn't need to. They're moving around the map. They're playing it very, very composed, very, very smart style of game. And Columbia College showed in those final moments that they can win 5v5 if they get it, but the team gets split up. The TP came in from Julian, but he was not with MNRL. And without those shields, without that protection for MNRL, Julian cannot deal with this Youngbin who has an IE Graves. Like, he did actually end up building the IE in that 1v1. And MNRL can't survive against the superfed soul laners without the shielding from the Karma. So it just kind of falls apart on both sides. And again, UCI plays so intelligently to their win conditions. They draft for skirmish, they draft for split push, they draft for this kind of running gun style, and they execute.
And now, if you're Columbia College, you've got to look at that one and say, okay, obviously, we can't force them to play our game if we do it like this. It's time to adapt the strategy. It's time to come up with a different plan of attack, because we saw UCI has the answer and has the tools to deal with that sort of an approach.
Exactly. You know, if I'm Columbia, I'm walking away from this game saying, okay, well, they can obviously play this style. You're left with 2 options. You either draft all hard winning lanes, or you go all early game and you try to do what Maryland did yesterday. You try to play a bloodbath and just outplay them mechanically in fights, and you just try to win, right? The other option is, if you want to play this sort of measured style, you need to draft hard engage and preferably multiple forms of it. Because you have to be able to instantly collapse on the split push, instantly collapse on anyone that shows and kill them off. And how do you do that with Cho'Gath, Trundle, Morgana? Like, there's no real engage there. If that's a Malphite, if that's a Rakan, if that's, you know, a Blitzcrank or whatever, then maybe you have an option and maybe you have a chance to shut down this UCI style.
Well, that's enough from us for now. Let's go ahead and hear more about Game 1, though. We're going to send things over to the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. And Azael, I finally got to take a toss from him. It's my first time hosting the Analyst Desk since Flowers cast. So
wow.
I got to salute the captain, and it felt amazing. Anyway, Short Hop is here. Welcome. That probably should have been the first thing out of my mouth. Either way, we have more collegiate expertise here on the desk. So talk to me, I guess, real quick before we get into the game, how the Collegiate Championship sort of land tournament has treated you, I guess.
Awesome. So it's my first time being here, but it's been an awesome event. Everybody here is super nice, and the opportunity to be here and play on stage is definitely a unique opportunity for us. And I think it's something a lot of college teams want, so we're trying to enjoy it and just enjoy the experience fully. But it's been incredible.
And you've got a couple years left in your tenure, so you're gonna, make it back here and go farther next time?
We are hoping to. We're retaining most of our roster, so depending on the strength of our conference, we'd love to come back. So we're gonna have to work hard for it, though, because all the teams here definitely deserve to be here.
Sure, absolutely. And speaking of teams driven to be here, the finals are happening, of course. Let's talk about what happened so far in this series. Game 1 team comp, pretty interesting. Pretty much protect the Caitlyn, which was the opposite of what we expected. We're like, oh, their soul lanes are so good, and they play the supportive role to buff up this Caitlyn in the bottom lane. Meanwhile, we actually saw quite a bit of split push sort of power cut at the UCI side, Nara from the side, the Swain doing pretty well for himself as well.
Yeah, and it was interesting because there were a lot of mid lane bans thrown at Julian, and you saw him kind of force onto that Karma. But when you look at how the entire draft works together, it's a little surprising because we were talking a lot about Stumpy and Julian being some of these carry threats that might give them an advantage for Columbia, and they end up on Cho'Gath and Karma not really able to do much, and they're playing completely around this Caitlyn pick who, while Evan RL is great, don't get me wrong, he's going up against Latman and Bloodwater, who are two of the best players on UCI.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Columbia College should have looked to pick more damage in the top lane if going for something like the Karma mid. The Karma mid does not have an issue, however, it just didn't work in the comp here. They lacked the amount of damage to get them through the early game necessary and to help Caitlyn and Morg really win the bot lane.
And it was the kind of thing where, you can see how this comp works if it can get an early game lead and then kind of kite back and force them into you with all this disengage. But you're going up against a Graves who's going to win the matchup versus the Trundle. You were talking about how the Swain's going to slowly start out pushing the Karma as you get closer to level 6. And then their bot lane should be this power point. But like we already talked about, maybe the player mismatch makes it a little difficult, and they were not able to find any pressure on the map. And now you're dealing with this split pushing Gnar, and you heard Azael talking about in the cast, you don't have any engage anymore. So how do you stop them when they get their lead?
And it just it ties into the whole win conditions point from earlier on, right? It's great, UCI going to play their spread out macro game, the Gnar on the side forever, and it felt like on the opposite side, right? Columbia College wasn't really doing that. Their solos were not in places to have advantages for themselves once you got into the mid game. So even though they have the better team fighting comp, and we saw good 5-on-5s from them, despite a 6,000 gold lead later on to this one, and it didn't matter because, well, it turns out Nar can just solo your entire base while you're trying to do this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where UCI very much playing to their win condition of play that map out. It was 1-3 at one point, 6K gold lead for them, and on the flip side, Columbia College not snowballing any lanes, not having enough carry potential on some of their best players, and as a result, the game kind of stalls out.
Right. I would have really liked to see them use the Caitlyn Morg lane more, because when you draft the Caitlyn Morg, you're looking to win the bottom lane.
Yeah.
And due to the fact that the jungle and mid from UCI just had significantly more pressure, Caitlyn Morg could not take down the tower when they were looking to. So almost the opposite ended up happening in this replay, where we're just seeing UCI roll over Columbia College in the bot lane because their mid and jungle just don't have the pressure that Swain and Graves do, and they end up falling behind when they really should be further ahead in bot lane. So the game opens up for UCI massively here.
Yeah, it basically went to the opposite of what you expect. Maybe you don't necessarily get first blood or kills in that lane if they play well around bindings, but you do expect to get first turret down there. That's the entire point of that draft, right? First 6-7 levels, maybe until the first item, Karma should be pushing in with your bottom pushing in, Trundle should have general priority over the Graves because you have 2-to-1 in pushing lanes, and yeah, that never came to anything. It was just an equal to losing laning phase, and so the team fights never happened. Yeah,
and they still found some pickoffs because UCI was pushing pretty aggressively. They had basically, after that play, 3 winning lanes. They're shoving up, and sometimes the collapses that came in from Columbia were enough to find a kill, but it almost always came at the cost of some other objective that UCI was grabbing around the map.
Yeah, that's what happens when you got pushing lanes by the end of it, is they're just kind of doing more for this one. So we have one final replay, though. It is the last fight. There were those couple of glimmers of hope from Columbia College, but this double TP, which I thought might have been suicidal, still comes out well.
Yeah, I was really worried about this when I saw this start out. And it was just perfectly cut out by Descatron. He didn't have ult and finally gets it there. And that's when we realized, all right, maybe they'll be okay. Ends up in the middle of the team. Everyone's starting to get low. Good job building up that Gnar bar by Captain Nuke and kiting it out until they could finally turn back around.
Yeah, the fact that Swain and Gnar were able to live here is just absolutely insane. They kited out their comp, and the damage just wasn't able to come through. When the pick came on Caitlyn, the game was just over at that point.
Yeah, that's a sad gold graph right there. Just,
we're just losing gold graph. I do think I want to call into question, though, the decision-making from the mid, though, of UCI.
Yes.
He did a solo flank that got himself killed and almost gave away Baron while Gnar was split pushing. And that TP, I feel like if you're not up 7k gold, you might just like lose pressure entirely off that play. Like, they came so close to losing a hard 2v3 that they opted into. And that is something that can, I think, totally bite them in the end. And something I want to be very critical of as the series goes on, because those mistakes can cost you games.
It's them kind of giving up that win condition. Their Gnar was relentlessly split pushing. There was an engage attempt in the mid lane that didn't work out for Columbia. So the intelligent thing to do is just back off and say, great, our Gnar can keep split pushing. And then, like you said, that flank, that momentary lapse in playing to your win condition can really come back and haunt you if it didn't work out. But luckily, that TP did.
So to redirect, we have side selection for Columbia College. They have picked red side themselves, so both UCI and now Columbia have picked red, seemingly top lane counter pick being the name of the game. That matchup seems to be a pretty big deal, and as we saw, Gnar pressure on Cho'Gath was a big deal, and I want to see now if I guess Stumpy can make that happen for himself with the last pick.
Yeah, so going into the next game, I definitely think Julian and Stumpy want to change more to carry-oriented roles, and they want to look to put priority on the jungle. Through having a strong jungle and Misty, Stumpy, and Julian on hard carries, their bot lane naturally will be able to work with them more, and they looked really good in this game. So I think it's going to be necessary for them to pick carries and to just pressure the map more than they did this game, because they weren't able to use their win conditions early on.
Yeah, I think Stumpy, all things considered, played the Cho'Gath Gnar matchup pretty well. It's just like there's nothing else happening on the map, so this Gnar is just slowly whittling you down. And then 35 minutes into the game, it's like, what are you supposed to do at that point? So I think he showed that skill-wise, he didn't get abused by the Gnar at all in the laning phase. And if he gets a stronger matchup for himself, he might be able to turn that one around.
Right, they played equally skilled, but the matchup is supposed to be winning for Gnar, so that's what happened. Well, that's going to do it for game one. UCI took it, but Columbia have shown they are not going down without a fight. Meet us back here for game two to see how the series continues.
Descatron on the front line, going to be doing a lot of damage in return. Sonya's Hourglass giving him golden off the side. It's Julian versus Youngbin. Julian staying alive, but with MNRL down, there's surely no way for Columbia College to fight this one out now. Latman with the true shot barrage brings it in from away, while Descatron will find the triple kill on the stump.
Yeah, UCI collapsing from all sides. They're going to get Bucksack, and they are going to get game one of the collegiate final.